What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable actors sits down with daytime television's most outspoken host? You won't believe what unfolds when Nicolas Cage's appearance on The View takes a shocking turn that leaves the entire studio in stunned silence. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is an explosive confrontation that exposes the darker side of live television and celebrity culture. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouses clash in ways nobody saw coming. Last night's episode of The View was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance for Nicolas Cage's latest film project, but what started as casual conversation quickly spiraled into one of the most intense confrontations in daytime television history. From the moment Cage walked onto that set, tensions were simmering just beneath the surface, and it didn't take long before everything erupted in spectacular fashion. The trouble began almost immediately when Whoopi Goldberg introduced Cage with what seemed like an innocent enough question about his recent career choices. "Nicolas, you've made some interesting film decisions over the years," she said with that trademark smirk that regular viewers know all too well. "Some might say you've been in some pretty questionable movies lately. What's driving these choices?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun, and you could see Cage's expression shift instantly. His eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a noticeable pause before he responded. "Questionable according to whom, Whoopi? I'm curious about your definition of questionable, because I've been making films for over 4 decades. But Whoopi wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed to lean into the confrontation with the kind of aggressive energy that has made her both famous and controversial. "Well, let's be honest here. You've got to admit that some of your recent projects haven't exactly been Oscar contenders. There's been a lot of talk about your financial situation influencing your movie choices." The mention of his finances was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Cage's entire demeanor changed in that moment, and the studio audience could feel the tension crackling through the air. "My financial situation?" he repeated, his voice rising with barely controlled anger. "That's a pretty bold statement to make on live television without knowing the facts." What happened next was pure television gold, but not the kind anyone was expecting. Whoopi doubled down with a comment that would prove to be the breaking point. "Nicolas, everyone in Hollywood knows about the tax issues, the spending problems, the real estate disasters. We're not here to judge, but shouldn't actors be honest with their audiences about why they're taking certain roles?" The silence that followed was deafening. You could practically hear a pin drop in that studio as Cage processed what had just been said to him on national television. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled but filled with an intensity that made everyone uncomfortable. "Honest with audiences?" Cage said slowly, deliberately. "You want to talk about honesty, Whoopi? Let's talk about the honesty of ambushing a guest with personal attacks disguised as interview questions. Let's talk about the honesty of pretending this is journalism when it's really just tabloid gossip dressed up for daytime TV." The other co-hosts were visibly squirming in their seats, clearly unprepared for this level of confrontation. But Whoopi seemed energized by the conflict, pushing even harder with her next comment. "Look, Nicolas, you're a public figure. Your life is public record. The lawsuits, the bankruptcies, the foreclosures, these aren't secrets. We're just asking you to address the elephant in the room." That's when Cage truly erupted. Standing up from his chair, he turned to face Whoopi directly, his voice now filled with unmistakable fury. "The elephant in the room? You want to know what the elephant in the room is? It's the fact that you think you can sit there and tear down someone's life and career for entertainment value while hiding behind the pretense of legitimate interviewing." The studio audience was completely silent now, and cameras were frantically trying to capture every moment of this unprecedented confrontation. Whoopi, perhaps realizing she had pushed too far, tried to regain control of the situation. "Nicolas, I think you're overreacting here. These are legitimate questions that—" "Overreacting?" Cage interrupted, his voice echoing through the studio. "I'm overreacting to having my personal financial struggles, my family's privacy, and my professional integrity attacked on live television? You sit there in your comfortable position of power and judge other people's lives like you're some kind of moral authority. But what gives you the right?" The confrontation was escalating beyond anything The View had ever experienced. Cage wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was going on the offensive, and his target was squarely focused on Whoopi's approach to interviewing and her treatment of guests. "You know what the real problem is here," Cage continued, pacing now behind his chair. "It's that shows like this have forgotten the difference between entertainment and exploitation. You invite guests on supposedly to promote their work, but really you're just looking for vulnerable moments to create viral content. It's predatory journalism at its worst." Whoopi's response revealed just how deep this confrontation was cutting. Predatory? That's rich coming from someone who's made millions off of bizarre performances and publicity stunts. You've built your entire career on being unpredictable and controversial, and now you're upset when someone asks you direct questions about it. The gloves were completely off now. What had started as an uncomfortable interview had transformed into a full-scale battle of wills between two entertainment industry veterans who clearly had very different philosophies about public discourse and celebrity responsibility. "My performances and my art are not publicity stunts," Cage fired back, his passion for his craft evident in every word. "I've dedicated my life to exploring the human condition through film, taking risks that other actors wouldn't dare take, and pushing boundaries that make people uncomfortable. But that's what art is supposed to do. What you're doing isn't art. It's gossip disguised as journalism." The tension in the studio was now so thick it was almost suffocating. Other co-hosts were trying to interject with attempts to cool things down, but both Cage and Whoopi were locked in this verbal combat, each refusing to back down from their position. "You can dress it up however you want, Nicolas," Whoopi shot back. "But facts are facts. Your career trajectory speaks for itself, and your financial problems are well documented. We're not making this stuff up." That's when Cage delivered what would prove to be the knockout punch of this entire confrontation. "You're absolutely right, Whoopi. Facts are facts. And here's a fact for you. I've won an Academy Award. I've created memorable characters that will outlive both of us. I've taken artistic risks that have influenced an entire generation of actors. What have you contributed to the world of cinema lately besides sitting behind this desk tearing down people who are actually still creating?" The statement hit like a thunderbolt. You could see Whoopi's expression change as the full impact of Cage's words sank in. The audience was completely silent, and even the cameras seemed to pause as everyone processed what had just been said. But Cage wasn't finished. The floodgates had opened, and everything he had been holding back was now pouring out in a torrent of righteous indignation. "You want to talk about my choices? Let's talk about your choice to ambush guests instead of interviewing them. Let's talk about your choice to prioritize controversy over conversation. Let's talk about your choice to use your platform to tear people down instead of building them up." The studio was in complete chaos now. Producers were frantically trying to signal for commercial breaks. But this confrontation had taken on a life of its own. Whoopi, clearly rattled by Cage's counterattack, made one final attempt to regain control of the narrative. "You're way out of line here, Nicolas," she said. But her voice lacked the confidence it had carried earlier. "This is exactly the kind of behavior that people are talking about when they question your stability." That was the final straw. Cage's eyes flashed with an anger that was both terrifying and magnificent to witness. "Stability? You want to question my stability? I'll show you stability. I'm stable enough to recognize when I'm being disrespected, and I'm stable enough to walk away from it." Without another word, Nicolas Cage ripped off his microphone, threw it onto the coffee table, and began walking toward the exit. The studio erupted in confused murmurs as cameras followed his dramatic departure. Whoopi called after him, "Nicolas, come back here. We're not finished." But Cage never looked back. As he reached the studio doors, he turned one final time to face the cameras and delivered his parting shot. "This is exactly what's wrong with entertainment today. You've forgotten that the people you're interviewing are human beings with dignity and respect, not just content for your highlight reels." And with that, Nicolas Cage stormed out of the View studio, leaving behind one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history, and a very shaken Whoopi Goldberg, sitting in stunned silence as the show cut to an emergency commercial break.